Our story begins in the streets of Garabong, a district in Seoul. A stupid fight begins to escalate, and two cops show up quickly but fail to contain the situation. That's when we meet Detective Ma Suk-do from Seoul's crime unit, discussing something about his car on the phone. He breaks up the fight without even hanging up. Then he pays a vendor for the stolen knife and simply walks away. He's headed to a much more serious crime scene. A young man has been attacked by a man in a navy jacket, and to complicate matters, the victim has a serpent tattoo. Ma Suk-do knows very well what that means. That guy is a member of the Venom gang. So he pays a visit to their boss, Serpent. He says the hit was ordered by their rivals, a Chinese-Korean gang called Isu. Off goes the crime unit then, to check out a certain gambling arcade. The detectives are just looking around at first, but there's this one guy who really needs to work on his poker face. He's so scared to see the cops that Suk-do immediately realizes he's up to no good. Chasing the idiot leads him to what looks like the Isu meeting room. Suk-do makes sure to grab a face right away, letting everyone know they should cut the crap. One of them does not get the message. Suk-do is upset at the disrespect toward such a nice suit as he runs after the thug. It doesn't take him long to knock him out and bag his knife as evidence. Not far from there, we have the pleasure to meet one more gang, the Black Dragons. These are Chinese gangsters who have just arrived in Garabong to collect a few debts, and this is their leader, Yang Ta. Talking to the gentleman who's just been let out of the trunk, he says their travel expenses will be added to his debt. He cries in despair and begs for his life. With friendly laughter, the boss says he can chill. Nobody is about to kill anybody. After all, dead people can't pay them back. At the police station, the interrogation is underway, but the suspect is not talking yet. So Ma Suk-do gives him a helmet and tells his partner, Byung-sik, that they're going to the truth room, which is actually a specific corner of that same room, strategically covered by curtains to avoid the cameras. The captain arrives just in time to miss that part, not that he would care much. He's mad about the recent spike in gang activity and how it makes him look bad. Now Suk-do had enough. Invading the Isu base with the usual politeness, he grabs their boss by his twins and takes him to Serpent, the Venom boss. Just like a couple of toddlers, the two gangsters are forced to apologize and shake hands, or else. The detective even gets a sweet photo of the new besties side by side. On his way out, Suk-do warns Serpent about recent rumors. He better not get caught bringing girls from China or anything like that. He's also welcome to pay the check now. Once alone, Serpent gets a phone call. It takes him to the Black Dragons and that guy from the trunk, who turns out to be a Venom member. Backed by several men, Serpent decides to bully his boy out of this, mocking the newcomers for not knowing who they're dealing with. And that's pretty much the last thing he does. Venom member Sungwoo is then chosen as Serpent's heir, meaning that he has to pay off the debt now. And where is Ma Suk-do? Believe it or not, there's yet another major gang in the same district. Their boss, Wang Chun-sik, invited Suk-do tonight, trying to find out more about the turf war. Suk-do tells him to stop poking around and just chill before he makes it all worse. He also bravely resists the gifts he's offered. That is, until the new girls come in. He suddenly remembers he's not really on duty at this time. No harm in a drink or 20. Hours later, one of the girls is frantically trying to wake him up. The cops are here, and there are 14 missed calls on his phone. Sneaking out of the room, Suk-do starts to yell at his partner and complain about the general incompetence of his colleagues, as if he knew what this is all about. He even tells Byung-sik that he was the first one to get here, which is not even a lie. He follows the cops into the same room he was before, which is now the crime scene. The hostess tells him what happened. She and the manager were called to that room because of some Chinese customers. They were too drunk and went a bit too far with the girls. So the manager tried to kick them out, but they attacked him with an axe. Wang comes in, returning from the hospital. The manager lost an arm. He tells Seok-do to look the other way while he takes care of it. The detective tells him to back off, but he sends some of his men to look into it anyway. Meanwhile, Yang Tai is having breakfast with Sung-woo at his wife's shop. He reminds him why he survived. There is still a debt to be paid. He's also curious about the venom supply of girls. Those rumors were actually true. They are sent to the gang by a Chinese agency. Yang Tai is glad to hear that, and he mentions some other stuff that can be done to get the money. One of them involves the arcades that belong to the Isu gang. At the station, Seok-do is getting an earful from the captain because the security cameras show him arriving at the club hours before the incident, and obviously not in a law enforcement capacity. Luckily, they also show an image of the 3 Chinese suspects. Time to ask around then, see if anyone knows them. They soon hear about the overly hostile takeover of the Venom gang. Right after that, they find bits of serpent in the trash, disposed of like a Mr. Potato Head. At the C-Story arcade, one of the Black Dragons is throwing a tantrum. He kicks and punches the machine, complaining about the money lost. When someone tells him to calm down, he breaks the machine with a chair, and Yang Tai says he wants to speak to their boss. When Jang Isu arrives, Sung-woo is waiting for him outside. He says the new Venom boss is ready to see him. Yang Tai calmly informs Isu that this place belongs to him now. He'll let him keep the other shops, but only if he plays nice and never comes here again. Shocked at what they do to some of his men, Isu just leaves in silence. The captain is giving Seok-do hell about this case. He's the first in line for a big promotion, and something like this could jeopardize it. But as soon as the other guys in the crime unit say they need more money for the investigation, he begins to fake a splitting headache. By the time he realizes that Seok-do has his wallet, it's already too late. In the shop, Sung-woo's wife gets cornered by Yang Tai. She is too afraid of him to fight back and finds herself forced to fulfill his wishes. At dinner time, the crime unit and the Black Dragons happen to pick the same restaurant. Yang Tai and Seok-do eyeball each other as their instincts kick in. When the gangster goes to the men's room, Seok-do begins to strategically position his men. One of them is Hong Seok. He follows Yang Tai into the kitchen and gets suddenly attacked with a wok and boiling oil. Chaos ensues, and the Chinese manage to escape. Seok-do chases the gangsters outside, but ends up losing them in the crowd. Sung-woo is having a nasty fight with his wife. He is jealous of Yang Tai's advances, but she says it's all his fault. He failed to protect her. The neighbors begin to knock on the door, complaining about the noise. But when Sung-woo opens it, these are not really his neighbors. These are Hwang's men, and they put him through some aggressive interrogation. Sung-woo asks Hwang for a chance to kill the man himself. Seok-do and some other cops are at the hospital visiting Hong Seok. His fiancée is there too. Seok-do gives an envelope with cash and says everyone chipped in, knowing how cheap the department can be. Once he's alone with the detective, the young man says he wants to be transferred back to intelligence services. He's embarrassed to confess that this incident made him too afraid of field work. Seok-do says he has nothing to be ashamed of. Everyone who looks brave is actually good at hiding their terror, including himself. He promises to put in a word about the position, but now what he needs is lots of rest. There's a truce between the gangs for a few weeks, but Seok-do warns his men not to trust it too much. And he's right. One day, some of the former Venom boys are with 2 of the Black Dragons, quietly counting their money, when a car comes crashing through the wall. It's the Isu gang, coming for payback. Sukrak, the short-fused Chinese, is livid to see what happened, so he ignores a reminder that the big boss told them to lay low for a while and walks right into Jan Isu's trap. Hell is about to break loose, but then the crime unit arrives and stops them. Seok-do tells Jang Isu to stay out of this, and his gang leaves. The 2 Chinese are then chased by the cops. Sukrak is overpowered and taken into custody. The other one gets away and calls the boss. At the station, Sukrak refuses to answer any questions, and this time they don't even bother to pull the curtains. He says he wants a lawyer, but the detective mishears that last word as taser. His Chinese is not so good, you see. At some point, Sukrak decides to bite his tongue, and the cops have to shove a towel into his mouth to prevent that. Meanwhile, Jang Isu is attending his mother's birthday party. She makes an emotional speech thanking him for the comfortable life they have. Everyone is happy and dancing, so the masked man is not noticed right away. After he ruins the party with a fire extinguisher, Yang Ta walks in with a cleaver, ready for some chopping. He fights off some of the goons before getting to Jang Isu, and then he finishes him off. The crime unit watches the whole mess in the news. The captain is furious at their incompetence. He says he can make Sukdu captain if he gets this wrapped soon, but the detective shrugs off the offer. Then, more bad news. The chief wants to see them both. They find out that Yang Tae's real name is Jiang Chen, and he's in the most wanted list in China. Working as an enforcer in a Harbin gang, he became famous for his cruelty. His boss was arrested 4 years ago, and he'd been quiet in that period. Given the high profile of the case, the chief says the case is going to homicide now. Seokdu then says this is much bigger than just 3 guys. He promises 25 arrests in 10 days and dazzles the chief with the chance of a total mop-up operation that could put him in the cover of the newspapers. The homicide and crime unit don't really part ways in the best of terms. Meanwhile, the Black Dragons have apparently landed a top client. Mr. Guak is a great man with a little problem. Like so many others in history, he wants to hire the dragons to get rid of the gang members who insist on invading construction sites. The details will be discussed over lunch. Shomwoo says he's not hungry. As soon as they enter the restaurant, he makes a phone call. At the table, Yang Ta is trying to raise the price. Mr. Guak makes the mistake of laughing and gets kicked off his chair. His business partner says the dragons should be interested in getting rid of those people, since they are Huang's men. And speaking of the devil, guess who was on the phone with Sungwoo? Wang's enforcers break into the restaurant and throw Yang Tai out the window. He limps to the car and drives off. The other Chinese guy is in the back seat, and he's not doing too well either. In the passenger seat, Sungwoo grabs a knife and tries to finish the job but fails miserably. Seokdu is starting to lose his patience with these gang leaders ignoring his advice. Wang's biggest goon has a bit of a disrespectful attitude, so Seokdu knocks him out with a single punch. That prevents the others from trying to stop him. He gets into Wang's office and they begin to argue. The detective understands the vengeful motivation and would even be willing to turn a blind eye. But that's only in case he succeeds. So far, none of these badass gangsters have managed to strike back. The only decent victory against the Black Dragons is still Sukrak's arrest. Stubborn as a mule, Wang says he won't rest until he has that man's arm. So Seokdu gives him a stab-proof vest and tells him to select 3 of his men to be arrested. Shomwoo's widow is now in an even worse situation. Forced to talk, she tells Yang Ta her husband was once approached by Wang. That's the second time he hears that name today, and it's getting on his nerves. Meanwhile, the crime unit is talking to the district shop owners and asking them to cooperate with any tips that come up. They are afraid of the Black Dragons and lost faith in the police long ago, but Seokdu talks to them as a resident. They can't keep living in fear or they'll be victims forever. The officers then instruct them to be careful and discreet while gathering information. For a few weeks, they report every incident to the crime unit, giving a detailed account of all the trouble the gang causes them, the exorbitant pay demanded and the harassment during collection. Hong Seok comes by the station to give his former boss a heads up. Sukrak will be deported to face trial in China. It was a direct order from the commissioner. When the Chinese authorities come to take Sukrak away, Seokdu offers him a deal. He gives up his boss location and goes to jail in Korea. instead of getting the death penalty in China. Sukrak doesn't say anything, but when they're in the car, he can see the Chinese agents are involved in drug trafficking. He offers help to find a distributor. By the time he gets to the airport, he's a free man again. Or is he really? The Chinese officers are actually actors hired by the crime unit. The whole thing was staged. Sukrak goes back to his boss with the amazing story. He's not that impressed though. He finds it hard to believe they let him go free. Unless he talked. Luckily for Sukrak, he has a sample of their product to prove to him he's telling the truth. He says they want to meet him and close the deal. Now the detectives are frantically trying to gather enough manpower to make the arrest as simultaneously as possible. They don't want anyone getting tipped off. The fake drug lords are having some ramen in the middle of that mess when they get the call from Sukrak. They arrange to meet at a hostess bar, and the busts begin minutes before. Sukrak shows up with a bunch of guys, but when the cops get them, Sikdu realizes their boss is not there. He's at Huang's club with the rest of the gang, trashing the whole place. Huang escapes and is almost getting to the police station when Yang Ta gets to him. But there's too many people around them, and he's forced to let go before he's done. Hong Seok recognizes the assailant and calls Sikdu right away. By now, Yang Ta has caught up with the news about the busts. He grabs a fake passport and gets in the car, but the brave boy is standing in the way and almost gets run over. Sikdu drives into the other car to stop that. Everyone starts punching everyone until the police cruisers arrive. Once again, Yang Tae escapes. Looking for a place to hide, he gets into the restaurant where Sikdu usually eats. He calls Mr. Guak and says Huang is dead. He needs the money now because he must go back to China. But Guak is no street gangster. No proof, no payment. And we know he's not wrong. Huang is very much alive, and he tells Sikdu everything. While he's on the phone, the detective walks by the diner and sees the window's been shot. He finds both the victims still alive, but no sign of Yang Ta. Before getting into the ambulance, the boy from the restaurant says he overheard the thug say he'll return to China. Yang Tai is not too happy to receive a payment order instead of cash, but he's no longer in the position to bully his own dreams into reality. He goes to the airport and stops by the men's room to make sure he looks normal enough to board a plane. When he gets out of the stall, Sikdu tells him he should have wiped his ass with that boarding ticket. He's not going anywhere. After they beat each other up and destroy the entire restroom, Yang Ta finally gets the handcuffs he deserves. And this is the end. This was a recap of the 2017 movie The Outlaws by Hong Film, starring Medong Seok and Yoon Kai-sang. So, which gang was the worst of them? And what could the police have done differently? Let us know in the comments below with #CinemaRecap. Until next time.